Hey, what is going on, guys, and welcome to our 45th Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes in-depth character review, where today we are doing a long overdue video, and that is on the B2 Super Battle Droid. If my memory is correct, it's been exactly 1 year when the Erodium pack for the B2 Super Battle Droid expired, and even though he's been in the game for a little over a year, he continues to be a very relevant character and a much needed character that everyone should get at one point. So let's get right into this review and start off with the history of the B2 Super Battle Droid. The B2 Super Battle Droid was an upgraded version of the B1 Battle Droid with superior firepower and superior armor. The Battle of Naboo proved that stronger droids were needed to succeed the previous generation. They needed droids who did not heavily rely on a droid control ship to provide a signal and which had a greater level of independence. Also, the sturdy duranium frame of the Super Battle Droid was larger and more heavily armored than the B1 Battle Droids. With the upgraded intelligence, armor, and firepower, B2 Battle Droids managed to help the Separatists win many battles by mowing down enemies on the battlefield and opening up many opportunities for a successful battle. With the history out of the way, let's bring our conversation back to the game and talk about the free-to-play way to unlock this character and get some more shards during your farming process. And there's only one free-to-play way to get them, and that is through the Cantina Battle 6D for 12 Cantina energy per battle, which makes him a very accessible character for the mid-game player. But before you farm or gear up this character, you probably want to know what the numbers look like. How does the B2 Battle Droid compare to others in the game? And he has quite a few pros. And he is number 24 in potency, where his potency is 43%. And as we'll find out later on, I highly recommend bringing this number a little bit higher to always ensure that debuff is applying more often. Since the B2 is considered a tank, the rest of the pros are all defensive-based things. As we see in health, he is number 29, where the amount of health that he has is 23,991. Moving further, we also see he's pretty high in protection, where he is number 16 for protection, where the amount he has is 28,319. And then combined health and protection is also in the top third in this game, being number 17 for combined health and protection, where he has 52,310 when you combine both of those. And lastly, it's always great to have 10% health regeneration. Since he does a lot of AoE damage, he will gain a little bit of health here and there every time he uses his mow down ability. When examining the major stats even further, we see there aren't really any averages for the major stats in this character, so we gotta go straight into the stuff that Chewbacca wants to cry about. And that is the cons. He has quite a few bad things in here, with the first thing being speed. He is number 101, with the speed being 111, but as we'll find out, his kit really addresses this, and he really does not have a low speed in the grand picture of things, but he has low damage output. Number 115 for maximum damage, and his maximum dealing attack is 2,796, which is very low. Following this, number 113 for maximum basic damage, also being 2,796. And his AoE is number 33 in the game, which is in the bottom third for damage dealing AoEs, where he will be doing 2,359 damage roughly before mods are considered. As I kind of alluded to, the B2 Super Battle Droid's kit addresses many of the numbers, so let's get right into it. And the first thing you will know is that the B2 Super Battle Droid does not need any Zetas right now, and he has a decent kit, but the weakest thing about his kit is his basic, known as Heavy Arms. It is very simple, and all it does is it deals physical damage to the target enemy and inflicts evasion down for 2 turns. The next two things are what really define the B2 Super Battle Droid, with the first thing defining him being mow down. It has a 3-turn cooldown, which is quite low. It deals physical damage to all enemies and dispels all positive status effects on them, with a 65% chance to also inflict buff immunity for 2 turns. And just for clarification, the B2 Super Battle Droid removes buffs and inflicts buff immunity before applying damage. Then there is his unique, known as Relentless Barrage, and it is a really awesome unique that pairs very well with Mowdown. The B2 has a 40% chance to gain 100% turn meter whenever another ally's attack is evaded or if another ally is damaged by an attack. So the B2 Super Battle Droids kit may look very simple, but it is the perfect example of a simple kit that does quite a lot for this game. And before we talk about how he works in the game overall, let's take a quick gander at his gear requirements. And overall, he is going to be a difficult character to gear. He's a little above average for the Rancor raid gear, needing 4 pieces. He needs a lot of AAT raid gear to even get to gear 11 from gear 10. Gold pieces, he's pretty much right on average, needing 2 separate gold pieces. And when you subtract all the purple gear that he needs from the Rancor as well as the AAT, he doesn't need too much normal purple gear. He's going to need a 150 Mark III Carbantes, 100 Mark V stun guns, and nothing too serious beyond that, but he just needs a lot of raid gear. And long story short, I find him perfectly useful at gear 10 if you don't want to go all the way to gear 11, but I do highly recommend getting him to gear 11 at some point if possible. But now it is time to put on my subjective hat and talk about the B2 Super Battle Droid from a subjective point of view. From my personal experience, I'll give you some recommendations for teams and mods and whatnot, but the B2 is just a character I recommend that everyone should have ready no matter what. He's almost a part of every meta that has existed since his arrival into the game. Originally, he was designed to counter Old Ben and Dooku-led teams and to counter Royal Guard, since many people hinged on Royal Guard's taunt, but he's continued to be an outstanding character despite his kit ever changing since his release last year. But some may ask, why is he categorized as a tank and why doesn't he taunt? Because most people expect tanks to taunt, but the B2 is considered a quasi-taunting tank, meaning he does not physically taunt, but because of his kit, he is constantly pressuring the enemy to focus more fire on him rather than his allies. And all this pressure is mainly because of his mowdown ability and his unique Relentless Barrage. One thing that is bound to happen in battle because of the game naturally, your characters will be attacked quite a lot. Sometimes your character's attacks will be avoided, but this allows many opportunities for the B2 to gain 100% turn meter and step in battle to punish the enemy by removing all their buffs that they rely on and apply buff immunity. Buff immunity that is applied on a frequent basis is deadly against Sith teams who rely on stealth and teams that rely on tenacity up, taunts, or gaining foresight. As you will see in videos, he is so active. Sometimes in the first 15 seconds of the game, he already took 5 attacks because of all the action from the enemy team. You could technically consider him to be one of the fastest characters in the game due to how often he will gain turn meter if you keep attacking his allies, and oftentimes you will find him being the one who takes the most turns in battle. He's arguably the best buff dispeller in the game compared to others similar to him like Baze, Echo, and Death Trooper. Unlike the others, he will engage in battle more frequently with his turn meter gain and remove buffs more often, and prevents buffs from stacking up with his buff immunity, which the others do not have. Because of this, he is even a part of the current meta. I see him in teams such as the Resistance, Empire, and the Sith. He especially helps teams that want to try and apply debuffs, but they need something to help them against those tenacity up teams or teams that have triple, quadruple, or quintuple cleanse characters. So the point I'm trying to make is that the B2 helps you find those openings so you can finally apply your debuffs or apply damage, avoid certain tanks from taunting. It is just a very useful debuff, and the main problem with him though is using him in your team means a huge decrease in your overall damage output, since he is not churning out big damage by any stretch of the imagination. As a result, if you are using him, you should try and make sure your other characters can make up for his lack of damage. And the other downside is that he really can't be used for the AAT or Rancor raid. He's mainly just a very solid arena character that works in a huge variety of lineups. But kind of speaking further about his weaknesses, let's look at his mortal enemies, and really there are only 3 debuffs that are truly the perfect counter to the B2 Super Battle Droid, and that is Daze, Shock, and Fracture. Without gaining his turn meter, he is doing next to nothing for the team since he is not retaliating and gaining all that turn meter. Ability block, stun, and cooldown increases are only temporary counters. Because of the fact he can constantly gain turn meter, he will quickly recover from ability block or stun with all that turn meter gain and shake off those debuffs quite fast. Stealth is another real issue for the B2 because he will not react to enemies who are under stealth and attacking your allies. And the other counters I find are characters that can do big burst damage or call in a lot of allies to assist to help you knock out the B2 Super Battle Droid fast, because he will become a huge annoyance for the team, and oftentimes you may just want one big damage dealing attack to knock him out of battle so you can focus on everyone else. Now for the best friend section, I'm showing you a graphic giving you some recommended lineups for advanced players or people who might be beginners or in their mid-game progression. This is just a small sample of teams that the B2 can work in for. He can do so much in many different lineups, and any team that can use the help of buff immunity or frequent buff immunity against those triple cleanse teams or against Jedi or against Sith, B2 has a place for that. Tenacity Up is also great to help him resist those debuffs more often, such as Shock and Daze. Lately, he's being used a lot in Darth Maul teams to help them counter Captain Rex teams, and it also works with Darth Nihilus because buff immunity always helps Darth Nihilus have debuffs on the field so he can increase cooldowns and get to annihilate faster. Another very popular use for the B2 Super Battle Droid is in resistance teams, which are starting to become a little more popular nowadays. So overall, he is going to work in many different lineups, which is one reason why I highly recommend you add him to your inventory, because you never know when you might need to use him once more in the game. Now for the mods, my number one recommendation for the mod set is Potency, to always make sure that his debuffs are always sticking. Tenacity is also a helpful mod set if you want to ward off Daze and Shock more often. Critical damage, critical chance, and offense are not really recommended due to his very low damage output. For the primary and secondary mod sets, speed is not a number one priority, unlike other characters, since he will gain loads of turn meter on his own. Add a little speed just to ensure he is still moving a bit in the situation he does get shocked or he does get dazed. Or if you'd like, it's not a bad thing to just add a lot of speed to him, but I'm just saying it's not 100% necessary. But what is pretty necessary is trying to give him as much potency as possible, and if you want, also give him a lot of protection to make sure he is in the battle as long as possible in the situation the enemy team decides to focus more attacks on him. And lastly, we have Yoda's do or do not checklist, and overall, he can be used in everything except ships, mod challenges, and the raids. As of now, I don't suspect he will ever get a ship in the game, but one could imagine some ways he can find the ship. Mod challenges, unless they add a Separatist or Droid mod challenge, he's not going to have anything specific. And for the raids, he's not all that helpful, except for maybe P1 of the Rancor raid. Beyond that, not all that helpful, and there are much better characters to consider for the raids. So with that being said, let's go and pull up the Hall of Fame and talk about where we are ranking the B2 Super Battle Droid on this table. Now, quite a while ago, he used to be in the Grandmaster status for the longest time, until a recent revision I moved him from Grandmaster to Master. The reason for this demotion mainly boils down to the fact that he's only arena specific and you can't really use him for anything beyond that. His kit has also started to become a little bit more stale, but it's mainly because of his basic attack that only applies evasion down and has a very weak damage output, but that can easily be addressed if the Separatists or Droids ever got a rework. I can definitely imagine them sprinkling just a little bit of magic in his basic, making him a much better character and perhaps a Grandmaster once more. But there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please feel free to leave me a like, comment down below on what our next in-depth review will be on, and until then, make sure you subscribe so you're not missing a thing, and we will talk again very soon. Peace out!